देवांशी। हेलो
Yes,
देवांशी।
ma'am.
देवांशी, आप और एक और स्टूडेंट है ना मेरी मेंटी आपकी क्लास से, इशिता है कि कौन है? आई वांट यू टू स्टे बैक इन द मीटिंग फॉर मेंटर मेंटी बिकॉज लंच के बाद आई एम बिजी, so I want to conduct mentor mentee just after this class, right? So I have Ishita and there is one more, no, Devanshi and one more student as my mentee, right? I don't remember her name. She was last year only added, right? It's, let me see. It is Devanshi and Ayushi Jain. So Ayushi still is there or not? No, she is not there. So I'll announce it.
Ma'am, we have to join after this class, or
No,
should we
no,
stay?
you stay back. You guys stay back after I finish the class, right?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Adhish, you all can share your PPT for the presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I'm just inviting Sanjana and Yuvraj.
Yeah.
Just
So are we starting?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, is the slide visible to you?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, ma'am.
Good afternoon, one and all. So, the topic for today's presentation is Phytophthora infestans, and me and my group members, Yuvraj, Adish, and I, Sanjana, will be presenting on the topic. Yuvraj, next slide. So, we'll be discussing about Phytophthora infestans and the pathogen, the disease, and the distribution of the disease, the symptoms associated with different parts of the plant, the host, the life cycle of Phytophthora infestans, and the losses and how can these losses be managed. Next slide. So starting with the pathogen and disease. Next slide. So the pathogen was first described by M.J. Berkeley and subsequently named Phytophthora infestans by Anton de Bahy in the 1870s. De Bahy, who is also known as the father of plant pathology, conclusive studies convinced the scientific community that the wide sporulation of the infestants on infected potato plants was the causal agent of the disease and not the result of spontaneous generation from the decaying vegetation or the wrath of God. Thus, late blight signifies the official beginning of the science of plant pathology, and these early studies also contributed to the Louis Pasteur's germ theory, which was proposed 15 years later. Next slide. So Phytophthora infestans is a water mold, a fungus-like microorganism that causes the serious potato and the tomato disease known as the late blight or potato blight. So the late blight caused by the fungus Phytophthora infestans is the most important disease of potato that can result in crop failures in a short period if appropriate control measures are not adopted, and losses in potato yield can go as high as 80% in epidemic years, and during the past years, epidemics of the disease have occurred in 1985, 1986, and so on, and recently during the 2007 to 2008 season. Next slide. So Phytophthora is represented by 48 species, and most of the species attack higher plants, mostly angiosperms, and cause diseases of economic significance. And some species are facultative parasites, and whereas others are facultative saprophytes. And one of the most common and well-known species of Phytophthora is infestans, causing the disease called the late blight of potato or potato blight, and cool temperature and excess of water favors the growth of this fungus. Next slide. So here are some other species of Phytophthora which cause different various diseases and their hosts, and how can these diseases be managed. So in India, the Phytophthora infestans, it occurs in epidemic form only on the hills at an elevation of 2000 meter and above, and because of the cold storage facilities of tubers, the disease is at present of wide occurrence in the plains of India because the pathogen survives at the cold temperature. And talking about the first occurrence in India, so late blight of potato was first introduced in India in Nilgiri Hills between 1870 and 1880. Soon after, it spread to the Darjeeling district in the Himalayas. And basically the late blight damages the plants by killing the leaves and stems of the potato plants at any time during the growing seasons. It can cause total destruction of all plant parts in the field within a span of a week or two if favorable conditions prevail and no control measures are applied. And depending on the temperature and moisture of growing season, the control measures practiced caused by the late blight damage can vary from one area to another and from year to year as well. Next slide. So here there are two. Here we have the Phytophthora infestans in potato and Phytophthora infestans in tomato. Talking about the Phytophthora infestans in potato, the late blight of potato is mainly identified by the blackish brown lesions that are found on leaves and stems that may be small at first and appear water soaked or have chlorotic borders but expand rapidly and the entire leaf becomes necrotic, and potato tubers can become infected in the field when the sporangia are washed from the lesions on the foliage and enter into the soil. So the infections generally begin in tuber cracks or the eyes or lenticles, and the infected tuber tissues as in the figure that are there on the slide are copper brown, reddish or purplish in color. Now talking about the other side of the slide, that is the Phytophthora infestans in tomato fruit. So symptoms of late blight infections on tomato fruit are similar to Phytophthora diseases, and dark brown firm lesions as in the given figure occur that may enlarge and destroy the entire tomato fruit. The late blight lesions on the tomato fruit are often followed by soft rot and the disintegration as that was for potato tubers. Now, Yuvraj will be talking about the distribution and the symptoms associated with the disease.
So I hope that I'm audible.
Yes.
So good afternoon, everyone. So just like how Sanjana explained about the host and pathogen and where some of the topics, I'll be discussing about the distribution. And interesting part is that the history um, of this organism is quite interesting, as it has led to a famine in Ireland. Also, I'll be discussing about some of the symptoms. So moving to my first slide. The distribution of late potato and Phytophthora infestans. So it was found in a what scientists have been observed that there was a papaya bunch top. It was a disease and it was originated in a Caribbean region. What scientists have been found that this disease has been spreading and distributing from Cuba southward to the Trinidad, and it occurred and reported in Puerto Rico in 1931. Scientists also saw that the occurrence of this disease appeared in the restricted to Caribbean islands, and they observed that it not only restricted to Caribbean islands, but it's started and its distribution in the Central America and northern part of the South America. Also, this disease has been reported in Hawaii in recently, and also the bunch top is quite a devastating disease, and it has a very severe symptoms over the plant, and it restrict the commercial papaya population production. So the production was due to this disease, the production was quite difficult to be done, and the effect of Phytophthora infestans in Ireland was one of the factor, and it caused them 1 million to starve death, and it also made the people to almost knee down in front of this disease, as due to this disease they have to migrate to different countries. So this is one of the most interesting part of the historical impact. As in the Ireland in 1840s, it led to an Irish famine. And what happened in the in Irish famine, that the distribution of this disease has led to people that they won't be able to eat any such potato, as their whole lifestyle was dependent on potato, and it was recorded in some instance of the disease that in United States specifically, we'll look into the United States.
I can't hear you, Raj. Others, can you hear?
No, ma'am.
There could be some network problem, I guess.
I hope I'm audible, ma'am.
Yeah, now you're audible, Yuvraj. Now you're audible.
So what happened in the this disease led to occurred a major devastating problem in the United States. Specifically, if we look into the area, it has occurred in Philadelphia and in New York City in 1843. And what happened was due to the winds, the spores of the plant was spread to different parts of the different regions, and this led to an extensive distribution of this disease. And it was found that the Illinois or to Nova Scotia from Virginia to Ontario, and it will be really difficult to imagine, but it has crossed the Atlantic Ocean with a ship, and it was just because that there was a shipment has been taken place in which some seed potatoes were infected, and in 1845, and it was been transferred to some farmers. So, and this is also one of the reason how distribution has been takes place. And also later, all of the potato growing countries like Europe and some of the airline, and it also affected it very drastically, and it came into their fate that they used to eat Irish lumber regularly in their lifestyle. But after just because this disease, they were really difficult to allow its production and gain some income. They also it also lead to their economic loss and various decrease in their budgets towards this potato farming. And it was due to the regular evolving of this disease, it also made the population of the organism susceptible. So during the time of the First World War, Germany is one of the most country who has been mostly affected with this late blight disease, as this disease resulted in scarcity of potatoes and lead to deaths of. It will be really difficult to imagine that this disease of plant lead to 700,000 German civilians deaths due to starvation. And since 1941 in Eastern Africa, the potato production losses just because of this strains of Phytophthora infestans from Europe, as it has been drastically spread in the Europe continent. And there were some countries like France, Canada, US, and Russia. So there it has been researched that the peen festivals they found. So these countries were trying to make this organism as their biological weapon, but later they didn't found any potential in this particular organism as a biological weapon. So they denied this to make their biological weapon program. And the late blight, that was it was a A2 type, and it has been not yet detected in Australia. And so Australia was one of the countries which has been not detected this late blight A2 type of the country, A2 type disease. And it has they had their strict biosecurity. It is just because they have some their biosecurity in their place. The disease has been seen in China. India was also a part of it, and some Southeast Asian countries. But in the periodic epidemics of the Phytophthora infestans, since it was first emerged, and it is regarded as periodically emerging as a pathogen and a periodically re-emerging pathogen. This pathogen was continuously evolving, and distribution is continuously taking place. So here I'll be beginning with the symptoms. As you can see, some of the symptoms of these organism, that is the Phytophthora infestans, and lead to a late blight disease. And you can see the different images how the symptoms has been taken. I'll be discussing how this actually happens in the leaves, stems and the potatoes. So while looking into the seeds, as you can see in the images, how currently this disease has been, this organism has been infected the plants. The leaves are totally lost. How it happened is because there was some small water soaked spots. That first of all develops on the tips and the margins along the part of the leaf. They further enlarge, and the brown lessons were all get surrounded over the late light hollow. So but here interesting part is that we can see this emergence of the symptom during the morning hours, and at a time when there is a weather change, and mostly during when there is a dew fall in the morning hours. And if the weather turns dry, these symptoms rises. Specifically, we see it in the humid climate, and if the weather turns dry, the lessons become more necrotic and dry. But in the some favorable weather conditions, there were low temperature, high humidity, and due to emergence of winter rains, the disease spread more rapidly, and the whole crop may get killed within 10 to 14 days. So this is the severity of this disease, and we should be sincerely looking over it. The other symptoms that occur in the stem, just like in case of infection originated from infected tubers, it get elongated from the brown strips, and they develop over the stem below the ground level, and they get encircled over it. So this is how the infection starts, and they spread slowly into the stem of the particular plant. The lesions also appear on the stems, but they nearly grow point when the inoculum of the fungus comes when the infected on from the infected plants. So whenever the inoculum comes from an infected plant, the infection starts from the stem. It's along with this from its growing point. The infection can also start from the nodes, and they extend both and down the stem, and the plant topples down under the congenital weather conditions, and these infections portions of the stem bear white fungal growth, especially visible in the morning hours. So the speciality of this disease is that the symptoms are mostly found to be visible in the early morning hours. Now we'll see how the distribution on the symptoms occur in the tubers. So you can, while looking into the potato images, you can see how severely they have been infected with this organism, and how currently this organism lead to resulted the potato into a difficult conditions. So how it happened is that it happened from the infected tubers. As it shows this irregular, shallow, and shrunken reddish brown patches. And the inside infected tissue is spongy, rusty, and brown. So this is how we can identify this symptom in a potato tuber, and we can refer it as a potato tuber. That we can say that the tuber has been takes place, and we can probably justify that it occurred due to the Phytophthora infestans in but in some regions like the some submountainous areas, the lessons on the tubers are locally called pathar dag, and these lessons are often invaded in secondary pathogens, especially in wet soils and storage, resulting into soft rot. So there were also smaller immature tubers on the more prone into the infection compared to the large ones, and rotting is more in heavy wet soils. So sometimes different soils also in fact play a major role in influencing causing the symptoms of the tubers. The late blight also does not spread from tuber to tuber in cold storage, but the varieties of some short stolons bearing tubers near to the stem are more found to be liable during the tuber infection, as in case of Cupri chandramukhi. Cupri chandramukhi is nothing but a variety of a potato causing a tuber. Now I'll move this put over on to Adish.
Okay, next slide. Next slide. You want. So coming into the life cycle of the late blight disease, let's start from the sporangium. The zoospores are produced in it, and some zoospores get released from the sporangia. Some develop the germ tube and infect the leaf. And slowly, upon contact with the leaf, the necrosis starts place. What they do is that during the summer, when the temperature is high, zoospores and the sporangia, they penetrate the leaf surface either through the stomata or directly through the epidermal cell wall. And they stay there. And during fall monsoon, these sporangia wash off the leaves and penetrate into the soil, directly affecting the tubers in it. And during the winter season, which is the favorable condition uh, for the pathogen in during the harvest time, the pathogen, when they are kept in a compiled area, they infect very quickly to the nearby healthy plants also. And when these infected seeds and potatoes are allowed to grow, the mycelium from these tuber infects the seedlings, and this produces and from that the sporangiophores are produced on the infected seedlings, which again gives rise to the sporangium. Sometimes the leaf secondary, when the necrosis occurs in the leaf, the secondary sporulation directly occurs from there, and the infection of leaves, it gives rise to sporangia instead of going through the instead of infecting the tubers. Next. Next. Now we'll talk about the losses and the management. Losses is we can see there is a very considerable defoliation of the leaves. The stomatal area is decreased a lot. It reduces the basic assimilation area of the potato plant. Then we have a negative effect on the tuber size, the starch content, and leaf necrosis occurs as usual. Next. Managing. In the tropics, what we usually do, we spray chemical spray programs are occurred, which prevents the disease spread during the cool winter periods, which is the favorable condition for infestants. And once the foliar infection develops, epidemics can become uncontrollable, which happened during the Irish famine. Keeping the number of leaf rots low is very crucial. Good coverage with fungicides is important. Systematic fungicides such as metalaxyl move upwards in the plant. Thus, if only the top leaves are sprayed, the lower canopy will be unprotected and are ideal for disease development, which is usually a common practice of the infestants, that lower leaves get affected very fastly. And the good coverage is also important if systematic fungicides are rotated with contact fungicides such as mancozeb. We should avoid introducing new genotypes of Phytophthora infestans by planting only disease-free seed pieces. And we should also prevent tuber infection by maintaining soil on plant hills and keeping the tubers covered. And we should kill the vines 2 or more weeks before the harvest to reduce the amount of infesting. We should also try to remove infected tubers during the storage. Next. There are two types of resistance which are recognized in this potato. Specific resistance, which is also called as vertical, race specific, or oligogenic. Then there's general resistance, which is a horizontal, race non-specific, or polygenic resistance. Specific resistance was discovered in the genes from Solanum demisum, and potato breeders incorporated those resistance genes in the new cultivars. Unfortunately, Phytophthora infestans is highly variable, and all new cultivars with specific resistance eventually succumb to this pathogen. Some cultivars with moderate levels of general resistance are available, and they should be planted where possible. Since cultivar characteristics are developed in temperate environments, growers in the tropics must test several cultivars to determine which will provide the best yield, good growth, and insect resistance, as well as tolerance to the phytophthora.
Hello, is that all, Adish?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. This was a very good presentation. I like the figures. References फिर से missing है जो मैंने कहा था. That one point I can say here again. And please include references. And another thing that just let me see the points. I've noted down points. Presentation was good. Material was very good. My favorite part was the famine. Because we cannot discuss Phytophthora infestans without the famine it caused, right? It caused a lot of losses, a lot of people died. So that is one thing whenever we talk about this Phytophthora infestans, we talk about this. Presentation was good, overall good presentation, content was good. Just that again, one thing that you were lacking. I said that make one acknowledgement slide or last slide, just write the references that from where you have taken this. So that part is very important, right? Okay, so this was this is open for the questions. Other group students, when you ask questions, please tell your group first and then ask question. Yes. Yes, hurry up. Tanvi. Yes, Tanvi, your group.
Ma'am, group 7.
Okay, group 7. Yes, go for your question.
So, can any one of you tell me what's the difference between early and late blight diseases on potato?
Yes, चलो बताओ भाई.
Okay, so the difference is that the early blight appears as more dark brown to black spots, or the pattern is basically circular or irregular on the leaves, which can be found on the leaves of a potato, whereas the late blight appears as pale green or a more darker shade of green, which further becomes brown, black in color. So the difference is in the appearance.
Only in the appearance, nothing else.
Ma'am,
What is the causal organism of early blight of potato?
ma'am, what is the?
Causal organism of early blight of potato.
Ma'am, the fungus.
Pathogen. Which pathogen causes early blight?
Ma'am, late blight is caused by Phytophthora infestans, that I know.
Yeah, early blight is caused by Alternaria, right?
Okay, ma'am.
So the pathogen is also different for the early blight and the late blight, right? Okay, fine. Yes, anyone else? Other groups? Devanshi, कहाँ हो तुम?
Ma'am, I'm here.
हाँ चलो पूछो क्वेश्चन. कौन सा ग्रुप है जल्दी बताओ.
Ma'am, group 3.
चलो group.
Ma'am, I don't have any question.
You don't have any question? Devanshi?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me ask you then the question. If you have understood everything very well, then okay. What is the causal organism pathogen of early blight of potato? जल्दी.
Ma'am,
Then
pathogen.
तुमने सुना ही नहीं है तुमने, right?
Ma'am,
You
it's
all
something from A.
something from me. रहने दो, तुम सुनते ही नहीं हो, अपने आप को म्यूट कर लेते हो, सोचते हो तुम्हारी बारी नहीं आएगी, किसी और की प्रेजेंटेशन है, बस चलता रहे, right? Fine. Okay, no problem. Any other student, please? Okay, so one more thing which I noticed was that when I mean losses, right? At one point when I told you in presentation that you need to mention losses, so that means what are the losses which are caused by this pathogen in crop in India and worldwide, right? Losses caused by Phytophthora infestans in India और in world, right? In world, तो उसके उसमें losses आएगा कितने परसेंट? 10% है, 20% है, या yield losses जो उसमें होता है वो कितने परसेंट है? तो there are number of research publications which are available which tell about the losses which are being caused by these kind of a pathogen. For example, there are some paper by the people who have discussed that the losses was caused around 30 to 50% sometimes in the crops, and sometimes the crops are totally destroyed. So by losses, I mean that you need to give the data with the reference that how many losses are caused by this pathogen in India and world comparison, right? So when we are comparing the things that how it is caused, like yield losses of around 6.7 billion, it is there are different figures which are available when we just Google the losses which is being caused by this pathogen, right? So when this is for the other groups also, that whenever you write about the losses caused by the pathogen, you mention that how many losses in percentage, in yield, or in production or in economic losses are caused, right? किसी का हाथ खड़ा है, कौन है? Sam. Yes, Sam.
Yes, ma'am. I wanted to know, like, why is it called late blight? Why is
Tell students why it is called late blight. Who is going to tell? Adhish in group.
Ma'am, I'm from group 1.
You're from group 1.
Ma'am, it is called late blight because it is caused by the fungus Phytophthora infestans, and the late blight fungus is adapted for growth underwater, and which will enable the disease progression in the field. So that is why it is called late blight.
So late blight is basically when this is called by the fungus that it affect the plant mostly after they are grown in the season, so late in the season, not maybe not just at the onset of the crop and you just grow them in the field, so they are not affecting them at that moment, but maybe late in the season. Is it that?
Ma'am, it will basically enable the disease progression in the field. That is why it is called late blight.
Okay, so that is why it is called late blight, because it is no, this is not exact answer. So why the early blight is called as early blight? It's definitely something to do with the season or do with the sowing of the crop, so that it doesn't occur at that initially in the starting that crops are grown. Maybe this disease is caused late in the season or when the plant is grown, right? Something, it should be related to that, not related to other things, if I'm not wrong.
Okay, ma'am.
Just Google this. Maybe you're wrong. Maybe there is some other reason.
Ma'am, in early blight, the tubers get exposed in early blight spores, and during the harvesting.
Okay, and then the late blight they get.
Yes, ma'am. It happens during post harvesting, during the storage.
During the storage also.
Yes,
right.
ma'am. The infected one, they get in contact with the other healthy ones.
Healthy ones, and they transmit the
disease. Lot gets.
Yeah, that is real now. That could be the reason. Okay, so we have this Phytophthora infestans. Just a moment. Okay, so what does the blight mean? My question is for you, this group, is that what does blight mean?
What, ma'am?
Blight का dictionary meaning क्या होता है?
Ma'am, is something that is getting spoiled.
और लेट ब्लाइट ऑफ पोटैटो के लिए एक डिजीज फोरकास्टिंग प्रो, एक नहीं थे खैर बहुत सारे थे, इंडिया में एक था पर्टिकुलर, बहुत कॉमन नेम पे, मतलब इट वाज यूज्ड एज अ वेरी कॉमन टर्म फॉर दैट डिजीज फोरकास्टिंग। कुछ याद है जब हमने डिजीज फोरकास्टिंग पढ़ा था? झुलसा कास्ट, we discussed the term झुलसा कास्ट, right? झुलसा means jalawa, like burned. So
Yes, ma'am.
blight, yeah. So झुलसा caste was basically in the Punjab and those areas when this
Yes.
disease was causing losses, right? So this
Yes,
was a disease forecasting program which was being taken up for this, especially in India when we talk about, right? Okay, students. So this is a good presentation, and I can see the improvement from the last year to this year. There's a lot of improvement even in the presentation skills. You all are more confident, and the way you are presenting, it is definitely improved from the last time, and this is the good sign, right? Because after this you're going to maybe higher degree or maybe job or whatever, so all these skills are actually required there, right? Okay, students, so I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a plant pathology theory class, right? So I'll see you tomorrow in the class, and in the next week we'll take up the next presentation. And in evaluation assessment, we are left with the practical of plant pathology. So that somewhere we'll take in the last, right? Because we have to do a practical exam also. So maybe February and towards the end, we'll try to finish that off also, right? Okay, so all of let me see. I'll download the attendance, no problem. I guess all are present, and all of you can leave except Divanshi and Ayushi. Rest can leave. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Excuse me,
Thank
ma'am. Excuse me,
Thank you,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, Yuvraj, आप कुछ कह रहे हो?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, is there any chance of college reopening in Feb?
I believe that, Yuvraj, I believe that in Feb they should open, but I'm not sure how much for you guys because you guys are ending, classes are going to end somewhere in Feb.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
in April, March, you're going to do your project work. So
Yes, ma'am.
we do hope that in Feb they are going to open, but we are not sure yet, right?
Ma'am, some students from other department, they have in the WhatsApp group they have got a message that it's opening from February 7th.
See,
Yes,
अभी
ma'am.
तक हमारे पास कोई मैसेज नहीं आया है आदेश. February 7 they are calling the faculties. We are going from the next week and some faculties are already going, but students के लिए कोई मैसेज अभी तक नहीं आया है. आएगा तो we'll let you know, right? And
Okay.
I believe that they will give some time because 7th से वो कैसे start कर सकते हैं? Outstation students को भी आना है.
Yes.
So maybe for a week they'll give a hybrid option and
But
then they
yes,
can start, but definitely they'll give some time, right?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yes, guys, you can leave the meeting. I need to speak to Devanshi and Ayushi for a mentor-mentee meeting, right? Devanshi and Ayushi. Okay, Ayushi, can you just unmute yourself?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Ayushi. अब बताओ मुझे कुछ problem, anything you want to discuss?
No, ma'am. Ma'am, currently I have no issue.
No issue. तुम तो बहुत अच्छे है, कोई issue नहीं है. हाँ. प्रोजेक्ट का क्या चल रहा है? कुछ ढूंढा कहाँ पे करना है, क्या है?
मैम प्रोजेक्ट के लिए एक्चुअली मेरे मतलब कांटेक्ट में है तो उन्होंने बोला कि